Welcome to Ohio Roots, the official podcast of the Ohio Genealogical Society. Join us as we embark on a captivating journey through Ohio's rich genealogy, history, and abundant resources. Hosted by me, OGS Executive Director Noel Poirier, this podcast brings you insightful conversations with a diverse array of guests, from OGS members, chapter leaders, and staff to renowned genealogists, historians, and influential figures within the genealogical community. Each episode delves into fascinating topics and captivating stories. So grab your headphones, hit that play button, and join us on this enthralling journey of Ohio's roots. If you're an OGS member or you visit our website regularly, you know that we offer a number of different webinars for our members and for the general public about what OGS offers and how we go about meeting our mission. I thought for an OGS Ohio Roots podcast, it'd be interesting for you to listen in on one of those webinars. This is a webinar we just recorded with OGS Archivist Jenna Kish, and it's a Q&A, answering questions from a variety of folks in the webinar about what we collect at OGS, how we collect it, what we like to collect, and all of those kind of interesting tidbits. So I hope you enjoy this kind of special Ohio Roots podcast of a Q&A with OGS Archivist Jenna Kish. Hi, Jenna. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, coming to you from the OGS Library in Belleville.
That's great. I've noticed a couple folks said hello from, I believe, Oregon and Indianapolis and Colorado. So nice to have all of you here on our webinar today. Jenna, if you don't mind, I'm going to get us started because before I get into other questions, I'd like to ask you a general one. If you could describe just in general, what is the makeup of the OGS Lyle H. West archives at the library? What's in it? What would people expect to see there? And kind of some details on what you do.
Sure. So the OGS Archives has kind of been in creation or collected, I should say, probably since the 1980s, if not the late 70s. So OGS has kind of almost from its inception been collecting archival material in some form. You could also say that our vertical files also contain a lot of archival material, although those are out in the library. So the Lyle H. West Archives contains a variety of records. I would say majority of what we have in our archive is genealogy research collections from family researchers from probably the 1940s to present. So people who have been doing research pre-internet, post-internet, kind of everything in between. So that's probably the majority of our collections are family research. But we also have maps, atlases. We also have pastoral records or church records, cemetery records. We also have records from physicians who, went door to door and did house visits. We'll also have more formal records. So we are the formal repository for Richland County's naturalization records. So if you have anyone who came through Richland County and may have naturalized, we have those naturalization records for the county. We also have tax records for Fulton County, as well as newspapers from the area. So quite a wide variety of things. I also oversee OGS's Lineage Society applications. So if you have ever submitted a lineage application, it eventually comes to me, and I'm the one who has the volunteers number them, and then also we file them away in the archives as well. So my day-to-day is kind of just coordinating those volunteers on those archival projects, as well as physically processing incoming collections and receiving donations to the archives as well.
Great. Thank you, Jenna. I appreciate kind of the background. I think it'll help folks as they start thinking maybe about the questions they might like to ask. When we talk about archiving the collection that OGS has, what are we talking about in terms of manpower or person power, I should say, and in terms of materials and methods that are needed in order to do that correctly?
Yeah, so it really will depend on the collection itself and kind of what materials are in the collection and then what it needs. So to use an example, currently I'm working on a collection from a woman named Agnes Howard Wells. So she was doing research in about the late 70s up until her about 2000. So mostly she is pre-internet. So what we're looking at with Agnes is a lot of letters between her and other genealogists, as well as files related to her research trips where she physically went to Allen County, OGS, or courthouses. So with Agnes, a lot of her collection is kind of going through each letter and reading what family are they talking about and kind of identifying those ancestors, as well as going through and very simply removing staples and paper clips that will rust and stain the paper over time if they haven't already. So in terms of manual labor, it's removing those letters from envelopes, removing staples and paper clips, flattening them to some degree, and then putting them in order. And most of the time, that's chronological order by also by the correspondent. So if she's talking to Frank Wilson from Illinois, it's finding all of Frank Wilson's letters across her collection and putting them in a file and putting them in chronological order, and then physically unfolding them, removing staples, and then reading them, not necessarily line by line, but definitely going through and skimming and figuring out which ancestors these people shared. So then that information can go in the finding aid, which is a document that is kind of a guide for the collection, like an inventory of what's in there. So then you can find the finding aid on the OGS website, look through it and be like, oh, we have this same Christopher Hauer from Rockingham, Virginia. We share him. So I might want to read that letter. So that's kind of the workflow within a collection like that. Something like a pastor's ledger that has baptisms, marriages, and funerals in it. So that ledger doesn't necessarily have to be physically handled as much as something like letters, but it is something where, you might want to dust it off, do some surface cleaning on it, and as well as put a tag on it so it can, have a little identification. I might want to put it in an archival box if it's very fragile and can't sit on a shelf safely. But for a ledger like that, part of it would be documenting what church was he a part of? Did he, as a pastor, move over time? So is he changing physical churches? Is he a traveling pastor? So we might want to do some research on him as an individual to see, what church he served. Did he serve multiple churches? Tracking him over time, as well as learning about the church. Did the church close? Does it still exist? Things like that. So there might be some historical research still involved with that record, even though we're not necessarily doing more physical processing to it. There also might be some indexing work that we'll want to do with that. It's one thing to know that your family was Baptist, but are they going to appear in this particular itinerant pastor's record? So some of the work that I did at OGS very early on was going through these ledgers and typing up an index to them so that the index could appear on OGS's website, or at the very least, or put it on the shelf in our library so that people could pull it and know that we have a fuller record in the archive.
So if someone, I'm going to jump in since I'm not seeing any hands yet, but if somebody wants to come to the OGS archive, and for me, a lot of the battle, a lot of the struggle is knowing what I'm going to look for, right? What's there. So what advice do you have, or is there an easy way for folks who are considering a visit to Belleville to the Samuel D. Isley Library to locate items in our collection at OGS that might be helpful to their family research?
Yeah, so I would recommend, if you're planning a trip, to definitely check out our manuscript key. So that is a list of collections in the archive. That's available on the OGS website under genealogy resources, library special collections, and then use a filter to filter for archival collections specifically. So I did a previous webinar that is available on OGS's website as well on kind of going through the manuscript key in more detail. So that's something, if you want to get more in depth with how to use the manuscript key, I would direct you to that previous webinar as well. But that document is organized by subject. So if you are interested in what family collections we have, so like, do we happen to have a collection from a previous researcher on your family that you might be interested in looking at? Do we happen to have a church record from your county? Or things like that. So you could always poke around using those subjects, but if you want to look for specific surnames or specific counties or places, I would use the Control F feature on your computer. That'll bring up a search bar that then you can search the page that you're on using Control F or Command F if you're on a Mac. That's probably the quickest way. So if you want to look for resources that we have on Licking County, you could just do Control F, put in Licking, and it'll hit everything we have that is essentially cataloged as Licking County. Also, another way you could do it is go through our finding aids. Our finding aids are the more detailed guide. So then you could search for specific surnames within finding aids as well.
For those of us who are starting to think about what happens to our genealogy research after we're gone, would you please talk about what criteria you have for accepting someone's research and what format it needs to take?
Yeah, so here at OGS, since we are focused on Ohio genealogy, we do like to emphasize Ohio ancestors. So typically, what we look at or look for is a collection that has anywhere to like 80 to 90% Ohio ancestors focused in the collection. So, of course, we recognize that many Ohioans came from somewhere else and they went to other places. So that's not necessarily a hard and fast rule. There are also options for, maybe let's say your maternal side has a lot of Ohio ancestors, but your paternal side doesn't. That could be a situation where maybe your paternal side goes to somewhere like Allen County or goes to another genealogical society or historical society that might benefit more from that research. And then maybe we just get your other stuff. So that's kind of one thing we like to look at is a kind of a collection that has majority Ohio ancestors. Doesn't necessarily have to be super far back or more recent. It just kind of overall looking at it holistically. As far as format goes, we don't necessarily have very many restrictions on that. If you have photographs, we ask that you identify as many as you can. Or at the very least say, I know this is probably from this family. So if you can't identify specific individuals, at least putting them in a little manila folder that says, I definitely know that these are from, great grandma's side. I just don't know specific individuals, because at least that's a hint for people that this is at least from this branch of the family. As format wise, though, beyond that, I mean, we like to, offer people sort of the freedom to just kind of get it in a format or boxes that work best for them. So we are not asking you to reorganize your collection. We are not asking you to weed your own collection unless you know, oh yeah, I accidentally put bank statements or my taxes filed in. Yeah, we don't want your tax records. We don't want your medical records. Keep all of those at your house. But if those, do happen to come in, we will shred them. We will not keep them in your collection. But things like that, I would not. We don't really have a restriction on how it is organized or anything like that. Of course, in archives, a creator order or original order is very important. So whatever order you put it in is most likely the the way we will also keep it in. If you have an order that is slightly more complicated or a system that's a little bit more complicated, you can always leave a little letter in there that says, hey, I filed married women with their immediate nuclear family until they got married. And once they got married, I bumped them to their married family. So that could be a situation where then I can put that in the finding aid that says, hey, if you're looking for a woman after she's been married, you're going to have to go look in that other family's records, not with her sort of birth family, so to speak. So you can always leave me a little breadcrumb trail. That's the benefit of when the donor is still, the creator is still living, and can also just kind of leave some notes behind of, this is kind of what I was doing, this is what I was up to, and things like that.
I was just curious, a lot of the finding aids that are on the website, there are several counties that don't have any listing. So does that mean you don't actually have anything in your collection from that county? Or does that mean that you're just haven't gotten to it yet, or you're working on it?
So it is a little bit of both. So with that filter feature for county, that is something that we have tagged that there is a large representation of that county in that collection. So there still could be Seneca County in a collection that is not tagged Seneca County. It just, the collection didn't have a significant portion of Seneca County ancestors in it, so that's why it didn't get tagged. So on the other hand, though, there are 88 counties in Ohio, and we don't have something from every single county at this point in time. So it is a little bit of both. So the tagging feature for those filters is based on a majority of, there was a lot of this particular county in there, but it was not sort of exclusive to that county.
Yeah, and I would also, while that may not be in the archive, there may be other records in the library holdings themselves related to specific counties that aren't represented widely in the archival collection. So we might have newsletters from historical societies or genealogical societies from a specific county. We may have family histories from a specific county, and those would actually be found more likely in our library catalog as opposed to the archival records. So you might be able to kind of hit both when you're doing your research. Unlock the mysteries of your ancestry with the Ohio Genealogical Society at www.ogs.org. Dive deep into your family's past and connect with fellow enthusiasts. Join us now for exclusive access to expert insights, resources, and a vibrant community. Visit www.ogs.org and start your genealogical journey today. If you enjoy listening to the Ohio Roots podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could go to whatever platform it is that you listen and give us a good review. Reviews help us get more listeners and reach more people with Ohio Roots and what we're trying to do with the Ohio Genealogical Society. So please leave us a nice review, and thanks for listening.
Hello. I have some information from my late in-laws. And they did research, and she did all the research for the Daughters of the American Revolution. Is that something, is that something that I can make copies of for the library to have, or does that interest you?
Yeah, so those type of, so you're saying copies of her application documents?
Copy of her application and all the documentation behind her filing for it. And notes from her sister-in-law helped her. Mm-hmm. So notes from when they would get together and that kind of thing. I just didn't know if that would interest the library.
Yes. So that's probably something that we would be interested in, especially if they're tracking like a Ohio Revolutionary War veteran, or who eventually came to Ohio, of course.
Yes, he was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. From Wayne County. So.
Yeah, so that's definitely, especially because any letters or notes that they would have had from their meetings, those are items that would not have ended up in the DAR application. So that would just be further kind of context to him and his life. And of course, what your mother-in-law knew from family history that then she had to back up with records. So it would kind of be a fuller picture of her application. So yeah, that's something we would be interested in.
Okay, wonderful. And do I make an appointment to come down to provide this information, or how does that?
Yeah, so
go?
if you would like to schedule a time so we know you're coming, and we always ask that people, our donors, fill out a deed of gift. So we would have you fill out a deed of gift that just recognizes the transfer of the property to OGS. So yeah, if you would like to send me an email and set up a time, we can definitely do that.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much.
yeah. It is not required to come in person. I mean, we do accept donations by mail. We just, if you send anything media mail, we recommend not to send it during the holidays because we have lost stuff during the holidays if people send
Oh,
it
I
media
bet.
mail. So, but you can do that. It is a cheaper rate. I would just keep it, between February and October. Your
Okay.
media mail stuff, if it's big, especially.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Jenna, what are some of, I'm curious, what are some of your favorite archival items to receive? And also, what are some items that OGS gets that we just desperately don't want?
Well, so on the positive side, some of the things that we love to get, I mean, we do love to get photos. We really do, especially when, they're named and well documented. Those are some of our favorite things to kind of spread out on the table and just look at. One of our collections that we got recently that, I mean, if you were following OGS's Facebook page, probably back in last winter, I think, probably winter of 2023, we got a collection from a woman who had inherited from her mother, who her mother was the goddaughter of a of the daughters of a what was he? He was a consulate. What was he? I can't remember the word. I'm blanking. Anyway, but he was a liaison to Cuba right before the Spanish-American War. So they were not only a wealthy family, but also they had very deep roots in Tuscarawas County. So there was just a wealth of photos and tintypes and daguerreotypes from that collection, and as well as just a rich history of his life in Cuba. Ambassador. He was the ambassador to Cuba, as an ambassador in Cuba, and especially in this sort of very pivotal time in Cuban history as well. So that collection was really cool to kind of dig into and figure out who that family was in particular. So that was very interesting. So those types of collections are always very fun to get. And there's also a lot of just kind of smaller things of, I mentioned Agnes Wells. So there's very kind of these views into the past of what genealogy was before the internet. And also just how much work goes into these genealogy collections, especially pre-internet, but also just sort of the love and care and time that goes into genealogy research, and receiving files like that and collections like that where you can see how important this work was to this individual person and how much effort went into it. So that's always very special to kind of be on the receiving end, and that's where the stewardship takes over of, this was something very important to this person, and taking care to preserve it for other people who it is also very important for. So as far as collections that we don't like to receive, it becomes more difficult when a collection has been passed around to different family members, and it's been picked over. So sometimes that can be difficult where we'll get a donation and then someone's like, oh, yeah, by the way, I dropped it off with my uncle and he picked out the stuff that he wanted. And, of course, the stuff he wanted is the stuff that was closest to him. So then we're left with you know, John Smith born in 1650 England. And we're like, okay, well, your uncle took all of the Ohio people because those were the people he knew too. So then we're kind of left with a skeleton of the family. So those collections are kind of difficult to work with or to even keep something from because it has been kind of picked apart.
Yeah, and if Jenna doesn't mind me jumping in real quick, another thing that we are not in a position to receive from donors are three-dimensional objects.
Mm.
So if you have an ancestor who was a member of the Grand Army of the Republic and you happen to have his medal, we would not want you to include that with your donation to us. Now, if there's a certificate that goes with it or something of those lines, two-dimensional, we would like to have that included. But when it comes to three-dimensional objects, we're really not the repository for those kind of items. There are numerous other military history museums, local history museums that might be more interested and more capable of caring for your three-dimensional family objects as opposed to your genealogical specific records. Carol has a question, and I think it's a challenge for us both. But Jen, I'll read it for you. It says, to see the resources after a search. Am I correct in thinking that you must be a member?
So it depends. If you're in a database search, some of those records in the database search are for members only. So I think the Bible records collection is a members only database search. There's one other one that is members only in that specific database search. So what the database search is just kind of the index entry. It is not digitized records. So when you do the database search and you get an entry for, let's say, something in OGS Bible records, it would just be the index entry for the record. It would not be a digitized copy, would not display.
And I think it's also important to know when you go to our genealogical resources area to search, whether it's digitized manuscripts or digitized books, many of those digital resources are available to members only. That's not to say they all are, right? And the way you can tell that is when you look at that screen, the resource will have a lock on it, a graphic of a lock. And if the graphic is locked, you need to be a member. And if the graphic is unlocked, then being a member is not required to view that particular resource. And I know with Jenna and Linda both, Linda Swanson, who's the OGS librarian, we like to make sure that any visitor to our website knows what resources we have, right? So many of those finding aids, those manuscript keys, those kinds of things are open for anybody to view. So we want to make sure as a researcher, whether you're a member or not, that we at OGS may have something to help you. And so that's why those things are left unlocked for you. I have a question here from Beth. She has her great-great-great-grandmother's diary, born in 1798 in Connecticut, moved to Ohio in 1835. Beth has transcribed it. This could include a transcription. Is that the kind of thing we'd like to have?
Absolutely. I mean, a transcription is, we would have accepted it without the transcription, but with the transcription, now we're very interested. So, I'm sure everyone has heard less and less people are being taught cursive. So I didn't know that was a skill that I could put on my resume, but now it is. I just so happened to go to a parochial elementary school that really, hammered down on cursive, and I went to public school and then didn't have to use it anymore, but kind of came full circle now that I'm working in this job where it's like, oh, it's very good that I know cursive and I'm familiar with that kind of is it the double S that kind of looks like an F? So yeah, having a transcription is incredibly helpful because that would be included with the diary, or I'm not sure if you're saying you would give us just the transcription, or if you would give us both the transcription and the diary. But either way, even if you just sent us the transcription, that's something that we would put on the shelf in the library under probably family histories. So that's definitely something we would be interested in, because that helps people get through the material more quickly. So then they can, read the text, but then also refer back to her original cursive for sort of a real record.
And if you'd ever like to feel old, my advice to you is to go to the Reddit thread or the Reddit group that looks at code breaking, and just look at how many people post letters that are written in cursive asking for people to break the code of the letter. It's pretty hilarious. We have a question here for you, Jenna, from Janet. She asked that with no three-dimensional objects, since we don't accept those, do photographs or should photographs come to us unframed?
So I would put a little asterisk on three-dimensional to be more so meaning artifacts. So if you have, for example, a tintype that is cased, please do not take it out of the case. If you have one of those, like, is it a convex photograph? That's kind of in that bubble frame. If you try to take that out of the bubble frame, it could actually destroy the photo. So, similarly with daguerreotypes, if they are still in a case, please leave them in the case. So that's sort of the caveat to that, is we're trying to avoid things that would need to be displayed. So with medals, quilts, coverlets, the way to do those items justice is to display them in some sort of museum setting, or have an exhibit. And so OGS is not really built for exhibits. But with photographs, that's something that, they can be shown to a patron when they are requested. So if it's any type of cased photograph or daguerreotype, or, like I said, one of those kind of oval photos, it's better to send them in that original case, because that preserves them. If it's, for example, a class photo from 1965, and you put it in a frame to display it because you like to see it, but it's a modern glossy photograph, that's something that we wouldn't keep the frame. We would remove the frame. So for those situations, the picture is just merely being displayed in the frame. It's not being protected by the frame, if that makes sense. And you can always email me. If you're not sure, you can definitely always email me and send me a picture of it before you take it out, and say, is this something that I should keep in the frame, or can I take it out, keep the frame here, and then just send you the photo? That is always something available to you if you're not sure.
I was just wondering, what are you focusing on, if anything, to be digitized and added to the website?
Yeah, so in terms of archival material, one of our kind of directives is to focus on materials that are multi-family. So things that cover many groups of people. So in terms of archival material, that is things like church records, things like the naturalization records, but from individual collections even, one of the collections I worked on first at OGS happened to have a Sunday school roster in it. One of the men in that collection was a Sunday school teacher. So that's something we would pull out of that collection to be specifically digitized for the benefit of many members. So that's kind of where our digitization program is right now, is kind of focusing on those collections that can help multiple people, or those items that then can help more people.
Yeah, it's the other challenge we're getting into, and I can let Jenna speak to this if she likes, is we want to make sure we also have the mechanism to get that information digitized in a professional manner and searchable in a manner that is useful to us, not just today, but a long time down the road. So it's a little more time consuming than maybe what had been done in the past, where we would simply scan pages of something and put it up there as a PDF or something like that. The goal now really is to scan things at archival quality for preservation purposes and just make sure that they are done in a way that is consistent with standards in the field.
Yeah, some of our ledgers, if the spine is too fragile, we can't put it on a flatbed scanner. And that's pretty much what we have here, our flatbed scanners. So if it has to be, held open in a cradle like this, and then the photo is taken downwards, that not only slows down the process because then we have to go to an offsite digitization center. So Ohio does have digitization centers at some of our big public libraries that are accessible to institutions and individuals. But then it's kind of that's slowing down the process is then we have to schedule time to go over there and do this ledger, as well as then optimizing it for our website as well. So there's a little bit more considerations with our digitizing archival material just because of preservation.
This is my great grandfather, Reyes Gonzalez, and he was born in 1845 in New Mexico. Was a farrier before the Civil War, and then was in the Civil War, and then was a rancher in northern New Mexico afterwards. In my scattershot way of researching, I looked at the Allen County website and found just a plethora of information about him. What compels people to send things to you guys instead of maybe keeping them a little more local?
Yeah, so it like I said, so we really collect Ohio. So what it could be the determining factor is some people just don't have very many Ohio ancestors. I mean, there are definitely people who they stop in Ohio for a moment, and it might not even be a full generation. It could be, he's born in Virginia, comes to Ohio because he gets bounty land, and then moves on to Indiana, and then he dies in Indiana, but then the kids keep going. They're moving west, right? So really, it's all going to depend on kind of just the content of the collection. So for something like Allen County has a national scope in their collection. So they are not just collecting Indiana, but they collect nationally. So it could also be that the donor felt that Allen County was a better fit because of their national scope. It could also be sometimes people just know about Allen County and they don't know that local societies collect. It could be that, maybe the local historical society can't take a collection of that size. So then it goes to something like us. I mean, sometimes people make donations to our local chapters, but some of our local chapters don't have their own collections. They might staff the public library's local history and genealogy room, but they can't take a massive collection from one individual. Whereas here at OGS, we are a little bit better equipped to handle those collections and kind of get them in a form that is usable. So those are kind of the ways that people decide versus us, versus Allen County, versus a local society. If let's say, if you have someone who is a part of or has Pennsylvania roots, I mean, the Pennsylvania Historical Society is a very strong collecting institution. So, and same thing with Allen County. It could be that, Allen County, or it's physically closer to you. We definitely have that happen sometimes where it's just like, well, you're the closest, you're the first person who called back. So sometimes it is just that simple too.
I want to thank Jenna for joining us today for this little Q&A. Please know that you can reach out to any of us at OGS at any time via our website and via email. I'll give Jenna's email address, so as you talk to her in the future about possible archival donations, you'll have her address. Her email address is jkish@ogs.org. And again, I want to thank everybody for attending this Q&A with the OGS Archivist Jenna Kish. And Jenna, thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for your good questions. Hope you have a good day out there.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that special episode of the Ohio Roots podcast, this Q&A with OGS Archivist Jenna Kish. It's always fun to be able to interact directly with our members and with our visitors and patrons about what OGS does and what we don't do and how we can help folks in the future as they're researching their Ohio ancestry. So I want to thank Jenna for joining us today. I want to thank everybody who attended the webinar that we recorded, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next Ohio Roots podcast.
The Ohio Roots podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Genealogical Society, the premier gateway for discovering your Ohio family history. Hosted by OGS Executive Director Noel Poyer and edited by Luke Poyer. Theme song is Beautiful Ohio, recorded by Bob Stanley and his orchestra in 1944. To learn more about joining the Ohio Genealogical Society, visit www.ogs.org.